everybody. This is Dr. Lori Shemek.
And I'm Omar Cumberbatch. You're listening to This Podcast Burns Fat. Hey, Lori, how are you today?
Hi, Omar. I'm doing great. Thank you. Yeah, doing wonderful. Excited about our guest coming up today.
Yeah, we have a good one, and we're back to gut health, which is always a
Yes.
topic I enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. He's a great Dr. Will Bulsiewicz, or Dr. B, as he's often referred to, is a GI doctor. He's a New York Times bestselling author twice of Fiber Fueled, and is one of his books. And he's all around a great educator on how we can improve our gut health and tips on how to do that. And, for example, he says, listening to your body is an important part of figuring out what works best for you, which is so true, isn't it?
Oh, totally.
I
And yeah,
mean,
he's definitely somebody who we could relate for this particular show, of course, because he was
mm-hmm,
over 50 pounds overweight and then really just transformed his health as a doctor. That was actually an interesting part of his story too. He being a doctor, you would think, and he would thought that he would just have a better handle on his nutrition and such,
mm-hmm.
and he really didn't. And his transformational journey is very interesting. I think the audience is going to love that as well.
Same. Yeah, I think so too.
Cool. Let's jump into it.
All right.
Hey, Dr. B, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Oh man, I'm great. Thank you, Omar. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you. Thank you for stopping by. We're really excited to have you. And, as I mentioned earlier, it is gut health is truly something that most everyone experiences negative effects of here and there, and some people on an everyday basis. So you are a savior, I know.
Well, thank you, Dr. Lori. I mean, I think that these things, as you're pointing out, are so important. And, most of the time when we think about gut health, we think about it in terms of symptoms like bloating or constipation or
Mm-hmm.
loose bowels or whatever it may be. But I think that part of the message that needs to be brought to the American public is that this is more than just healthy digestion. This is health throughout the entire body. It is holistic. And it affects all parts of who we are, including our mood and our energy and our brain health, our metabolism, our hormones, our immune system. They're all connected back to the gut.
Yes.
Definitely. Yeah, no, without a doubt. So, Doc, what fascinated you initially about gut health? How'd you get into this?
Well, Omar, I didn't plan this, to be totally honest with you.
How life
So
works sometimes.
yeah, I think so. I think so. And I think sometimes we are there's a plan for us that we don't know, and it just kind of
Mm,
happens, right?
true.
So, but if we were to go back to more than 20 years ago when I was in medical school, I originally thought I was going to be a pediatrician because I love kids. And then I realized, oh no, it's like actually the parents that you're dealing with, and they're not that easy. So
That's a great point.
I had to pivot. And the question is like, this is sort of the classic medical school question that people deal with is, do you want to be a surgeon or do you want to be a medical doctor? And I kind of liked both.
Mm-hmm.
And so that allowed me to basically like narrow it down. And gastroenterology, which is my area of specialty, this was the field that allowed me to kind of, do a little bit of both, spend time with patients in the clinic, also do procedures and use my hands. And I didn't see any sort of future in nutrition. In fact, at this point in my life, I was the guy among my friends who had the worst diet. And they made fun of me for it. Like I would just like had the most junky diet ever. And it was really the transformation that I had to undergo where I became the person who was sick myself. And
Mm.
in that moment where I was an accomplished, board certified internal medicine doctor at like arguably the top gastroenterology program in the country. And in that moment, I realized I don't want my own medicine. I wanted a root cause solution.
Thank
And
God for
so
you.
it was the discovery of nutrition and the gut microbiome, which was a science that was just starting to emerge 10 years ago, when I was dealing with these issues, and it changed my life. And then because it changed my life, and because I'm a medical doctor and deeply passionate about the work that I do, I had to bring it to the clinic, to the people that I was taking care of. So this became a routine part of my practice. And then it eventually became like, got to a point where I just felt like this story needs to be shared publicly. I need to put the word out. And so that's what led me to first social media, and then to being a guest on people's podcasts, and then eventually to writing books.
Wow, you've done a really great service to people, Dr. B. And, I know a lot of people they think they understand what gut health is, but like you mentioned, but it really does uh, affect every single aspect of our life, our mood, our immune health, our aging factor, everything um, that our brain health, everything that you can think of is
Yeah,
affected by health wise by our gut. And we know that now. And I remember 10 years ago, or maybe 15 years ago, we didn't know that much about gut health.
that's
And
right.
so, yeah, and so it's a fast growing field, and you've been right there with it, apparently.
Yeah, well, I've been right there with it because in some ways, feel like I am an early adopter, in the
Hmm.
sense that my own health issues motivated me to try to understand things that I hadn't been taught in medical school. And I started to read papers about nutrition. And being a gastroenterologist, if you start reading about nutrition, it very, very quickly leads you to the gut microbiome. And Lori, you mentioned that 15 years ago we didn't know very much. That is so true.
Hmm.
And it's the emergence of new testing.
Isn't it crazy how it's changed so much? And I'm sure you obviously have more knowledge than we do about it, but it's just mind-boggling what we found recently.
Well, and we're just getting started.
Hmm.
There's quite a period of time where most of the research was really just kind of focused on descriptions. Like, let's describe what we're seeing in this, in the gut microbiome in a person who has rheumatoid arthritis or ulcerative colitis or type 2 diabetes, or, whatever, insert a health condition. And we have those studies, but now we're actually moving into this new phase that's really interesting and exciting, where it's about how can we manipulate the gut microbiome and achieve better health, and in some cases achieve things that are like shocking, that we're able to pull that off by simply manipulating these invisible microorganisms that live inside of us.
Mm.
That's a really great point. Yeah, and I would also like to add to that list our oral health. I think that is huge, and that's more of the recent research that is playing a major part in all our chronic diseases.
Those that the you're exactly right. And our oral health, for example, whether or not a person has gingivitis is determined by the microbes that live within that ecosystem, within their mouth. Their mouth has a microbiome. And what's
Mm.
interesting is that we're now discovering that the microbes that originate in the oral microbiome will show up in other parts of the body in the presence of disease. So an example of this is in colorectal cancer,
Yeah,
where
that's a good one. Yeah.
they've identified specific bacteria that are clearly from the mouth, don't exist within the gut microbiome, but they're showing up in colon tumors.
Mm.
So, and it's just, Dr. Lori, it's our body is made up of multiple ecosystems.
Yeah, and many people don't know that. They have no idea that we have a mouth, an oral microbiome, or a nasal microbiome. you
Yeah,
know.
or in the same way that women who struggle with many women's health related issues, the vaginal microbiome plays a
Hmm.
central role in that. And that's an ecosystem, and it's distinct from the gut microbiome. It's not the same. Or like people that have inflammatory skin conditions.
The skin microbiome.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Doc, I just want to actually go back a second too, because when you mentioned how you overcame your own issues with your nutrition and stuff. I'm just curious, were you overweight at the time? What were you eating? And what did you notice when you eliminated some of these things? I'm just going to get a clearer picture of what was going on at that time and what made you jump to make those changes.
Yeah, so like to sort of contextualize this, the period of time that we're talking about is when I was in my early 30s. I'm in my mid 40s now. And I was someone, Omar, who like I was a three sport athlete. I was a captain of two sports teams in high school. I view myself as an athlete. And I feel like I woke up in my early 30s and one day it's almost like this moment where I'm sitting there looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like, I don't even recognize myself.
Hmm.
And I was 50 pounds overweight. I had high blood pressure. I had high cholesterol. Um, I had tons of anxiety. I was depressed. I had extremely low self-esteem. And the sort of crazy part about all this is that if you saw me on paper, you would have thought that my life was perfect. But if you really knew me, like knew me well enough to like actually be inside a room with me outside of work, you would know that I was struggling really bad. That's where I was at. And I knew I needed a solution. I knew I was in a dark place. And I tried different things. I tried exercise first. And it
That's
by
tough to
itself
get
is,
somebody to exercise when they're depressed, you know.
well, I'm a very goal-oriented person, and I knew
You
that I
are,
wasn't
yeah.
well. And so I tried to work my way out of it because in my life, when things are tough, I just buckle down and do more work. And so that's what I tried to do. And although I got stronger and faster and I could swim more because of the aggressive workout routines I was doing, I didn't actually fix my own health issues. It wasn't until I changed my diet that everything changed for me.
What
Wow,
did
that's
you change about it? I'm curious. Just give us a little bit of a picture of what it looked like.
Well, first, you have to understand that I so in in our medical education system, when a person is like in their residency and their fellowship, which I was for 8 years after medical school, they basically ask you to give the entirety of yourself. They leave nothing for you. You have to give everything to them.
and it's so unhealthy.
Oh, it's
It's
ridiculous.
beyond. I know it's not right.
And so the only thing that I had, because I had no money, I was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. I had no money. I had no time. The only thing that I had is that I love food. And so when I had any free time, it meant I'm going to eat the food that I enjoy because that's the only way I can reward myself right now.
Hmm.
So I went to fast food joints
Hmm.
like twice a day. And so now it seems completely obvious, especially for a medical doctor, if you're eating junk food twice a day and you're hopped up on like Diet Mountain Dew literally around the clock, it seems completely obvious that like, something needs to give. But like you know, despite
You
all of my
were,
medical training, I didn't see that.
yeah, right. That's
So,
why.
and there was Omar this day, this moment where, because I was in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and they had like at Hardee's, they had a deal where for like $5 you could get like 2,500 calories. And I used to get it all the time. And I remember specifically this one day where I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go home and try something different. And I was single and I wasn't going to like cook a gourmet meal for myself by myself. So I pulled out a blender and I threw a whole bunch of stuff in there. And I made the biggest smoothie you've ever seen.
Hmm.
And I drank that and I felt like something that had been missing from my body had come back.
Wow.
And I felt well enough in that moment that, like, when you're not well, you just want to feel better. So when you find something that does make you feel better, then you want more. So it helped me to sort of break that cycle and discover that, oh my gosh, like, actually, if I change my diet away from this inflammatory diet with fast food to something that's more holistic,
Hmm.
it it everything becomes effortless. Everything became effortless after that.
Wow, that's the key word right there, effortless, because that's the way it should be. It should never be an effort necessarily. There are some things that, you want to get going, which requires effort, but later it should just be effortless.
Yep.
So I think that's great. I just wanted to ask you, I don't know why I just thought of this, but do you think there's a genetic component to gut health?
Well, there is a genetic component. There's no doubt about that. But actually, believe it or not, the genetic component is more limited than you would expect. And we know this, Dr. Lori, because we have twin studies where they'll look at identical twins where, like, they have the exact same genetics, but they also, in the vast majority of cases, grow up in the same home with the same parents, same like similar conditions, eating similar meals. And yet, despite all of those similarities, including having 100% shared genetic code, they only share on the order of like something around 30 or 35% of the same microbes. So they're far more different than they are
Oh,
the same. Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, because my father and my grandmother both had not colitis, diverticulitis,
Uh-huh.
and had part of their colon removed. And I remember my dad saying to me 20 years ago, "You're going to get it, so just be prepared." And so I never did. But I was just wondering if there was for a personal reason, if there was a genetic component to that.
Well, if you were to go and take a look at some of these, like, specific health conditions, like there's no doubt that there is a genetic component to, ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. There is no
Hmm.
doubt, right? These are not just the microbiome. There's other aspects to this. But that being said, I also think, though, to some extent, the a lot of the things that we say, in our society that we've traditionally said, oh, that runs in my family.
True.
I actually think, like, at least I always sort of, it's like, oh yeah, and I nod my head, like, yeah, it's the genetics. Like, you're just stuck with a high risk
We
of heart disease.
That's what most people believe. Yeah.
Yeah. And, now the way that I see this is, oh no, actually, what you inherited was a lifestyle pattern.
Right. Epigenetics.
Yeah, that's for
So,
sure. So I'm
yeah.
curious, Doc. There's so many interesting trends that are going on right now about gut health, and one of the things that I've seen recently that's just on my feed constantly is this issue of parasites and gut health. I'm so curious to hear your opinion of that, and what you think is going on, and why is it trending so much right now?
Yeah, that's, Omar, I think the people, um, they know their own body really well, better than anyone else, right?
Mhm.
And they feel that something is off and something is wrong. And so they're searching for answers. And we are limited by like the quality of the tests that we have, right? So your ability to understand what's happening with your body can only go as far as those tests are able to take you and give you reliable answers. And I think that, the thing from my perspective is that I can't personally, this is just my take, and people certainly may disagree. I can't see or understand where that is in fact true, that parasites are the cause of all of our issues, when all signs suggest that the sterility of our society, the way in which we have like hyper sterilized everything, has moved us
Agree.
actually the opposite direction,
Hmm.
which is to a place where we're being too clean and we are far less likely to be diagnosed with or to be found to have parasites. I have ordered a lot of parasite tests throughout my career because I've taken care of so many people that have health conditions that require me to test for those things.
Hmm.
And I haven't found many.
Interesting.
That
And
is so interesting. Yeah. You would think it was just a rampant issue.
Yeah, according to
in the
my feed.
population.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the thing from my perspective is that I'm of the belief that the most important thing when we start to address health related issues or health in general is a proper diagnosis. We have to know the truth because you can't treat something unless you know what you're treating. And so this to me is where it's really important to work with someone that you trust that can help you to find those answers and really understand it. And if it is parasites, so be it, and get the proper treatment for that. But what we don't want is we don't want to end up on a wild goose chase under the guise of something that it is not. So we need to be careful with the way that we approach these things.
That's great advice. I really like that. Yeah, and I know some people who are maybe in probably relates to what you just said about getting, checked out and but is there any practical advice you can give our listeners just in order prevention wise I guess probably that's what I would rather ask prevention wise.
Well, there's certain rules. I mean, if we're talking about the health of your gut microbiome, this community of 38 trillion microorganisms that include bacteria and fungi and these things called archaea, there's certain rules that are universally true and applicable to all of us because it's just the laws of nature. And so these to me are the areas where I tend to say, like, we are unique, we are individual. There is no one size fits all, but here are the main rules that we all need to
Hmm.
follow. So number one, our gut thrives on diversity. A diverse microbiome is actually the measure of health. So more varieties of different species. We want as many as possible.
Sorry
And
to interrupt. But that goes back to what you were saying initially when when you drank that smoothie, you immediately felt changes thanks to the variety, correct?
I immediately felt changes because, to be totally honest with you, I think that I was taking my body from an inflammatory diet, like a diet that was like
Ah,
literally pushing me in an extreme way towards
mm-hmm.
inflammation, to the opposite, which was something that was completely holistic and anti-inflammatory. But that being said, um, that smoothie was, multiple different plants, multiple different berries, a couple different forms of greens, bananas. And so basically, I was like just throwing all this stuff in there. And it turns out that our gut thrives on a varied diet, a diverse diet. And this has actually been proven. There was a study called the American Gut Project, which, by the way, was actually an international study. But in the American Gut Project, they asked the question, who has the healthiest guts? And it turned out that it was the people who were eating the widest variety of different types of plants.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I've seen those studies. And but yet at the same time, the carnivore diet seems to help initially with tamping down on gut, really serious gut issues for people. And I don't know long term how it plays out, but initially it seems to work.
Well, so I think, yeah, that there's no doubt that that's true, that we have many people who report that they have improvements of their gut symptoms when they do a carnivore diet. And the way that I interpret that, so first of all, we have no studies. I don't question that uh, result in people, but we have no studies to like actually show a
Right.
benefit to the carnivore diet. But I think what's happening there, there's a few things. So number one, when you withdraw from things that your body struggles to process and digest, then you will feel better.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that you are making yourself healthier in the process. So we have to be careful with that.
Right.
So I would make an analogy similar to if I really like damage my knee. All right. If I hurt my knee, if I completely take myself off of any weight and I lay down on the couch and I never get up, I will not feel any pain in that knee. But at some point, I have to rehabilitate that thing.
Mm-hmm. That's a great
And
analogy.
and make the leg strong again, right? Because when I rehabilitate, although I may feel some discomfort, we try to do it in a controlled way, but although I may feel some discomfort in the process of rehabilitating the knee, I'm working to restore function so that I can get back to not just walking, but running and jumping and playing sports and doing the things that I love. And so when a person is forced to restrict their diet, Lori, when they go deeper and deeper into a restrictive pattern, they may feel temporarily better because they are avoiding foods that their gut struggles to process and digest. But the issue is they're not actually adding the ability to process and digest those foods back. They're actually making their gut weaker in the process. So
Interesting. Okay.
what we want is we want to actually take those, think about this conceptually similar to exercise. So think about your gut, and let's use the analogy that your gut is a muscle, and that muscle can be trained and it can be made stronger. And the way that it is trained and made stronger is through work. It has to be worked. So processing food, digesting food is work for the gut. So if we take, for example, a person struggles to digest beans as an example, it's quite common.
Mm-hmm.
If you completely eliminate the beans, you will not get better at processing beans. But if you reduce the amount of beans, substantially possibly, like reduce them to a point where you don't have any symptoms and you feel well, you are working that muscle and the muscle grows
So
stronger.
you're saying start small and increase as you go.
Yeah, I have an expression which is low and slow, which is a Beastie Boys song from back in the day.
Right. Uh,
So that being said, Doc, I'm very curious. Is there anything that you think that we should be avoiding food-wise to make sure that this stuff, because like some people are gonna be, okay, well, you know what, I'm gonna just start eating a whole bunch of sugar, right? Or
Yeah,
and I'll
totally.
start low and then I'll get high. Like, is there anything that you would suggest that we just like that we're really meant to avoid, especially in nowadays food supply?
Well, I think that Omar, there's no absolutes from my perspective,
Okay.
meaning that like you're not a bad person and you're not making yourself implicitly healthy because you had dessert, right?
Hmm.
It's more the pattern and what you do with consistency. The answer to your question is that like clearly the standard American diet, the way that we're currently eating is problematic. And a big part of the reason why is the dominance of ultra processed foods that include refined carbohydrates like sugar.
Hmm.
So, and that's not the only thing that's in there. I mean, sugar is clearly a part of the issue, but we can go beyond that to include there's 10,000 food additives in our food supply,
Hmm.
and we don't know what they do. And we're kind of sadly in the process of figuring that out, except we're not going to have an answer to the question, what do they do? We just are being sort of experimented on because we're eating this food, accepting it as our normal. And it was never normal. Our grandparents didn't eat this way when they were kids. The
yeah.
food didn't exist. So, and that's now in the United States, that's 60% of calories in the American diet. But sadly,
Incredible.
yeah, and now, well, and it's even worse with our kids. I'm a father of four, and the average diet of a kid in the United States right now is 70% ultra processed foods.
Wow. That's incredible. I remember eating a lot of junk when I was growing up, but not to the degree that people are eating it now. It just wasn't that available, actually.
Yeah, I was a kid in the 80s, and
Yeah.
I think that it was kind of accepted back then. Like these were new foods and they were exciting
Mm-hmm.
and they tasted good. And so I grew up drinking Kool-Aid and well, and I think that you can see where that got me, right? Like I had to sort of bottom out before I could transform
Right.
myself.
Yeah, I grew up drinking Kool-Aid and white bread sandwiches and TV dinners and that
Hmm.
all that stuff. And so it's a testament to the human body. If you had seen what I grew up on, you would
Oh.
be, oh my gosh, she's still alive.
Well, and I think that that's, the beauty of that. I mean, as you share that, I it just makes me acknowledge that not only is the body adaptable, but it's also quite forgiving.
Yes.
And so it's a beautiful and exciting thing. Like I think that I don't want this to sound like this pessimistic, negative thing. I actually sit here with great optimism because we know more
Mhm.
today than we've ever known. And we can make choices, and they can be small choices that can lead us in a direction towards better health, unlike, years ago where we just didn't know these things that we now know. So I think that's the exciting thing is the body and the gut microbiome is constantly redefining itself. And the choices that we make today, research has shown us by tomorrow will start to manifest in the microbiome.
I think that's so great. And I know you have done a lot of research into gut health. I mean, you're just an incredible force out there. And you have a program called Zoe, ZOE.
Yeah, so I am part of a larger team at Zoe, and I'm their U.S. medical director, and I'm very proud of the work that we're doing there. We just published actually quite recently in the absolute top medical journal on the planet, which is Nature Medicine. So, like to put this into
Congratulations. That's
perspective,
fantastic.
yeah, we're very excited. This is actually for the greater Zoe team, like even predating my work with them. They now have 3 papers in Nature Medicine. And each time that you publish in this journal, it's like for a scientist, the equivalent of winning an Oscar.
Wow. That's
Um,
great.
but what's really cool and exciting is that I think that, and Dr. Boyer, you and I were speaking briefly offline before we started about this, that I think we're entering into a new phase where, traditionally the gold standard and the absolute best research that existed was a randomized controlled trial. And the problem with this is that the randomized controlled trial generally tells us whether something works or doesn't work for a big population of people. But what we want to know is like, Omar, if you're a part of this and for example, take this medication, what happens for you? Right? Because that's what you care about. You don't care what the
Hmm.
randomized controlled trial said. You want to know, is this going to help you? And you want to know what's the risk of having an adverse effect, right? Because that's what we all care about. So
Right.
Um, and in order for us to decipher that, like that is true personalization. And I think we all can see and agree that there's no one size fits all when it comes to nutrition, that there's different things that work for different people, and we need to find that. And in order to accomplish that, we need to build a massive database. So at Zoe, we are a personalized nutrition company that uses at-home testing to check your microbiome, your blood sugar, which we do with a continuous blood sugar monitor. So you can like literally like test on yourself, eat something and see what it does to your blood sugar. Um, and we test a person's blood fat. And we take all of this information, we put it into a database where we have over 100,000 people. And using this, for example, if hypothetically, Omar, you did Zoe, using this, what we do is we say, okay, using all the information that we know, let's recreate Omar in our database, same age, gender, characteristics, health history, medications, supplements, all these different things. And then let's answer the question, what would be the optimal diet for this man?
That's
And that
fantastic.
and
Yeah.
that's what Zoe ultimately does is it creates a personalized nutrition plan through a program that people can then follow. And so the going back just briefly to the Nature Medicine paper that we published in May, the reason why that was a big deal is because we put our program, the Zoe Nutrition Program, head to head against the guidelines from the US government. And we discovered that across the board, the personalized nutrition program from Zoe outperformed US dietary guidelines, what our government says is the
Wow.
optimal diet. We outperformed it, lower triglycerides, lower LDL cholesterol, losing more weight, um, losing more off the waist circumference, better mood, more energy, better sleep. And my personal favorite is that people were losing weight and they were actually less hungry, which I find to be fascinating.
Yeah. And this is all due to optimizing gut health, correct? To personalized gut health.
This is through following a personalized nutrition program
Oh.
that is designed using their gut microbiome, their blood sugar monitor. Because like part of it too is like, Lori, if you enter into the app, because this is all app based, if you say, okay, well, I just ate this, we're gonna see what it does to your blood sugar,
I
and
just
then we
ate
can,
some crackers.
yeah, okay, so you just had some crackers.
Blood sugar.
What's it gonna do to your blood sugar over the next 3 hours, and how does that compare to me, and how does that compare to other people out there,
Hmm.
and what does that say about you, and how can then we use that information to give you better guidance on what to eat?
Because people respond differently. I mean, one person can eat white rice and not have much of a blood sugar spike, and another person, it skyrockets,
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. That is great news. You must be so proud. I mean, it's like having a baby. It's so exciting.
Well, I think that the fun and exciting thing, like I think this is the reason why we're here right now,
Hmm.
is that we're trying to like put stuff out into the world that makes a difference in people's lives. And I think we can all agree that, if you look out there right now, like we need to lift people up and improve their health. And whether it's having a good conversation such as this, where people can step away and hear, okay, based on what Dr. B said, I'm going to increase the variety of plants in my diet. That's number one. But like then there's these other things that you can do where you could, for example, do the Zoe program, or you could, for example, continue to find additional information, such as like listening to the Zoe Science and Nutrition podcast that we have. Like there's many things that you can do on this journey. Some of them are free, some of them are not. But at the end of the day, if we can lift people up and improve their health, that's what we're here for.
That's fantastic. And yeah, and you're everywhere. So, I mean, you're doing really well on Instagram. You have tips every day, information that people can utilize every day in their life to optimize their health, which is fantastic
Yeah,
on
no,
top of Zoe.
yeah, no, for sure. Because like you said, Doc, we do look out, and it does kind of seem hopeless at times when you look at the landscape that we're dealing with all
Hmm.
the diseases and illnesses that are truly unnecessary if you do the right thing. And sometimes people have the best intentions of doing the right thing and follow a lot of crazy advice. And at
Yeah.
least Zoe's a platform where they can get accurate, even if it is, ultimately the diet that might seem a little unusual. It's specific
For
for
them.
that particular person and it's going to work for them. So yeah, I just want to thank you as well and just give you an
Mm.
opportunity to share how to keep up with all the great stuff that you're doing, including the Zoe platform and yeah, any way that we
And your
can.
books, where
Yeah,
can
the
we find your
books. Yeah, we have a
books?
lot of things going on. So yeah, please
Yeah.
share.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, Omar, to what you just said, I at the end of the day, I just want people happy and healthy. That's all I care about. So, and whatever a person does in their own life that gets them there, even if it's in conflict to what I say, that's fine because I just want
Hmm.
them happy and healthy. That's what I care about. But if people want to continue this conversation and hear more, then there's a couple of places that you can find me. You can find me on social media as the Gut Health MD. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. Technically, I'm on TikTok, but you have to do a little underscore after the Gut Health MD because I think some 13-year
You
old
did
kid,
not do that. No, I'm
yeah,
kidding.
some 13-year-old kid hacked, took my account
Oh,
before.
that happened to me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and then you can learn more about Zoe. If you want to learn more about Zoe, you go to joinzoe.com. But also, I would encourage people, if they're interested, check out the Zoe Science and Nutrition podcast, where a lot of the different topics that we've discussed here today, we take a deep dive into it because I'm a regular guest on that show. So if you like what you hear here, then you can definitely check out more there. And then last but not least, my website is theplantfedgut.com, and I have a free email resource where my favorite thing to do is to email people and provide really high quality, exciting information about gut health based upon whatever it is that's happening in the world, whatever new exciting science there is. I like to basically provide that for free. So jump on that list and join the community.
Oh, that sounds so great. Yeah, we're so happy you stopped by. So thank you for helping to change our lives for the better, Dr. B.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. All right. Have a great rest of the day.
Yes, thank you.
You too.
Take care.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of This Podcast Burns Fat. We're so excited to have you as a listener, and we're hoping that you really enjoyed the content as well. And if you did, please run over to iTunes and provide a rating and or review. It will go a long way in helping us continuously build our listenership up so that we can provide you with excellent content regarding fat loss, weight management, and just an overall healthy lifestyle. Thanks so much. Have a great night.